Hey everybody, it is Professor Parish, and we are in Creative Writing Module 2. So hopefully you all had a really good first week of classes. Hopefully it wasn't too stressful getting adjusted and getting settled in. But I want to talk about what we are doing this week in the course. So I have Module 2 pulled up here. As you'll notice, Module 3 is now open as well, so you can work ahead if you want. Like I said in the last lecture video, I usually only post lecture videos each week to week. So sometimes I get a little bit ahead, but not usually. So next week's video, you can work ahead, but if you need any questions, you can email me or wait until next Saturday or Sunday when the lecture video will be posted. But I want to talk about week 2 here. There's not a lot of assignments, but we need to talk about them. So looking at our module guide, you don't have any reading assignments except for reading the short stories below. So there's 2 short stories that you'll need to read for the reading response number 1. And they are found in our blue textbook, the American Short Stories book. That is where the 2 stories that you're going to need to look at for this week are. So you have Navigators by Mike Meginnis, which is on pages 97 to 107. So it's about a 10-page short story. And then you have The Other Place by Mary Gateskill, which is on pages 61 to 74. So you have 2 stories in the Best American Short Stories book, and we'll talk about reading response number 1. But those are your reading assignments for this week, are to read those 2 short stories and then do the reading response number 1 and complete your paper topic and outline for paper 1 and submitting it to the Dropbox. So if you've not looked at the paper 1 guidelines, I've pulled them up here from last week. Basically, we'll talk about the topic and outline assignment first, since I've got the guidelines pulled up here. But essentially, you are creating a short story. And I had a student ask about this. Can it be any genre? Yes. If you want to do crime noir, if you want to do horror, if you want to do romance, if you want to do action, if you want to do comedy, if you want to do drama, whatever you want, you can do whatever genre of short story you want. The main thing is it has to have these elements. It has to have a character, at least one character, has to have a setting, has to have a plot, a basic plot, has to have a concise point of view, like is it all first person, is it second person, is it third person, what symbolic elements does it have? So there has to be something below the surface. And by symbolic elements, you can do a lot of different things with this. For example, sometimes an author will symbolically make a character's name mean something. Like if their name is, if their name is Sunny and they're a really bright, happy character, that's kind of a symbolic element. If a character wears red all the time and they're always really angry, that could be like a symbolic element, like that red coming through. If the story takes place in a room that is red and it's very tense and aggressive, that's a symbolic element. So you can look up symbolic elements and kind of figure out how you want to incorporate at least one into your story, but there should be at least one example that when I read your short story, I go, oh, okay, that's symbolizing something. Okay. It can even be a thematic symbolism. That can be that too. It also has an overall theme, meaning there has to be a purpose to why the story exists. What is the purpose of the story? What is it teaching us as the reader? And it can be a simple theme, like it can be a simple theme about like finding oneself or learning to do something. It can be a very simple theme or a very complex theme. I'm going to imagine though that since these are short stories, the themes will likely be very simple. But I won't hold that against you if you decide that you want to do a very complex theme in this story. I'm not going to hold you back from that. And then the story has to have a distinct and coherent style. So it needs to be consistent too, like a distinct style. And by what I mean by style is that it's not all over the place. It has focus and it all looks like your own writing. Like it's not cobbled together, right? I know some people are like, I want to get all surreal. I'm like, maybe not for this first story. Don't get all surreal and David Lynchian yet, right? So the story can be either nonfiction or fiction. So you can either make it up or it can be a narrative based on your own life. That's up to you. It must contain these elements. It has to be 3 full pages in length, not just 2 full pages and you start on the third page. No. It needs to be 3 full pages. It needs to be 12-point double-spaced font. Don't use giant fonts or bolded fonts. Choose a typical one. Like you can do Times New Roman. I like Georgia. Georgia is one of my favorite fonts. Georgia, you can use Calibri, you can use a font that's not overly big. I'm gonna know, I've been in college, y'all, and I've been teaching for like 9 years. I know when students use giant fonts to make their writing look bigger. I'm like, I'm going to switch it back to a regular font and count you off points if you try to cheat the system. Don't cheat the system. A good takeaway for college is that your college professors know when you're cheating. Just don't do it. best thing I can say. And your story has to have an introduction and a conclusion, which I'm assuming it doesn't have to be definitive, but your story has to have a starting and ending point. Even if it ends on a cliffhanger, it has to have a definitive end, right? So the way I'm grading it is that your distinct conclusion introduction are 10 points each for 20 points total. Your grammar mechanics are about a third of the paper, and then formatting, and then your elements and your creativity. So, and I'm pretty easygoing. I realize that everybody is coming at this from different levels of creativity in writing. So as long as you put forth effort, that's the big thing. As long as it shows that you tried, then you're going to get a lot of points for this. And if you're using those elements that are listed above. And I'll note if they're lacking in your paper. So if you get feedback from me and I'm like, well, there wasn't really much of a setting developed, then you'll know why you lost points in that area. So yeah, that's essentially the paper topic or the paper guidelines. So let's talk about the topic and outline. So basically, you can either enter this as a text box or you can upload a file. You can either enter the text directly or you can upload a file like a Word document. But for this assignment, I want you to write out a thesis statement for your paper. So what is your paper going to be about? Just something general. If you don't want to spoil me with the plot elements, just give me a brief general overview of what your paper is about. And then the overall points that you're talking about. So an outline, like a work in progress. This should not be a full-on paragraph by paragraph outline. I don't like those type of outlines. I know some people, they just give me a draft and they're like, oh, this is my outline. I'm like, no, you gave me a draft. That's not an outline. So that's not what I want. What I would like is just a bare bones skeletal structure telling me what you have in mind for points organized in your paper. It is not set in stone. You can alter it as you go, but the whole point of the outline, and I understand a lot of students are against outlines initially. When I was in college, starting out, I hated outlines because I was like, why do I have to sit here and plan out my paper? I just want to sit down and write out a draft in 2 hours and be done. That's how I thought I would do it. And for a while in college, that strategy worked. But the farther I got into my academic studies and the harder classes I took, the longer the papers got and the harder it was to just sit down and chuck out a draft. I needed to create an outline. And I think outlines are also a good way to keep you from that. I call it the 2 a.m. the night before syndrome, where you haven't wrote the paper yet and it's due in 3 hours and you're like, I need to do it. Some people work well under stress, but oftentimes it doesn't chuck out a good paper. So this is to keep you from being stressed and procrastinating, to give you at least a framework you can go off of as you write your paper. So I'm not looking for like a big draft already. I'm not looking for that. What I wanted is like, you have point 1, you have Roman numeral 1, introduction, and you can just bare bones explain it if you want to. And then you can say like point 2, character intro. Point 3 is the action happens. Point 4, this character meets this character. Point 5, leading up to the climax. Point 6, climax. Point 7, conclusion. It can be bare bones like that. It doesn't have to be very detailed. It doesn't have to be very crazy. I just need to know that you have an idea of where your story is going, if that makes sense. And if you are confused or you have questions about your outline, please email me this week and ask me, and I will be happy to answer them for you. But if you've done an outline for another class, it's pretty much like that. Just like a structure, a framework, just something to let me know that you have an idea for your story and how you're going to structure it. And you can change it. It can change, absolutely. I just want to know you had something starting out that you could work off of. All right, so it's worth 30 points. The outline is worth 20 and the thesis statement is worth 10. So if you just give me a thesis statement and you don't give me an outline, you're only gonna get 10 out of 30 points. If you just give me an outline and you don't really give me a thesis statement, you'll just get 20. But I just want you to have this assignment and it's due by next Sunday. All right, so you got a week to work on it. And then the reading response is also due Sunday, the 23rd. So let's open up and see what that reading response looks like. So basically, you've got 2 short stories that you're going to read, Navigators and The Other Place. And then after you're done reading, you're going to construct a reading response that should be 1 to 2 pages total, double-spaced, 1-inch margins, brief intro and conclusion. You could say in your introduction, like, I've read Navigators and The Other Place, and I'm going to talk about these basic things, A, B, and C. That's your intro. That's all it needs to be. And so I would like these questions to be answered in essay paragraph format after your introduction and before your conclusion. Question 1 is, how does the childhood of both narrators in these stories compare and contrast? You could do a couple paragraphs explaining how they're similar and different. Which story do you think is overall more compelling and why? Which one did you like better and why? One thing you would change about each story if you were the author. So no story is perfect, right? So what is one thing you would change about each story if you were the author? What would you do differently? And it could be something simple. It could be something with characters. It could be something with the plot. It could be with the style. Just what is something that you could change if you were the author of the story? All right. And so that's the reading response. So those 3 questions with an intro and a conclusion, and just make sure it's 1 to 2 pages double spaced. Pretty simple and straightforward, right? And it's due by Sunday. So yeah, those are the 2 assignments for this week. And then just reading those short stories. It's a pretty basic week, but I want you to be thinking about just what you're doing for this paper. And if you have questions, to just let me know, right? I like to give students free reign pretty much over what they write, as long as you stay on brief, as long as you stay with the theme of the paper, because I know as a student in English classes, I liked, especially in creative classes, when the teacher would let you kind of do your own thing and be creative on your own wavelength. So that's the goal anyway. So hopefully that works out. But if you have questions, feel free to email me and let me know. All right? But otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back to talk more about some techniques and things as we go into more with short stories next week. In the meantime, take care, guys, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.